Just off the call with Lauren from the Natural Nipple. Did you know that a mother's nipple communicates with the endocrine and immune system of the baby through little tiny microscopic holes in their nipple that goes back and forth between the baby's mouth and the breast? I didn't know that. Lauren does, and that is just one of the insane things she talks about on her journey to create a more natural nipple for bottle feeding. She's a fantastic communicator and an amazing entrepreneur. Hope you enjoy. And at the very end, as always, Chloe and I jump into the lab result session where we talk about whether or not we would actually get the natural nipple ourselves or for someone that we love. And what we decided for this one was...
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Decision Lab podcast. Today, we're talking to Lauren Wright. She's one of my best friends and favorite people, so this one might be a little bit biased for me. She's a brilliant CEO, scientist, and leader with a heart of gold and is deeply connected to helping people and making a difference. She's the founder of the Natural Nipple and CoCreate, which we will dive all into in this episode. So welcome to the podcast, Lauren.
I'm so excited to spend time with you guys.
Let's go.
Yeah, we're pumped to have you on here as well. We tried it once, but the audio got messed up, so it's all right. We're here again.
Those AirPods are long gone. I hope everyone can hear me well. And I'm just like very inspired by what you guys are doing. I call Chloe the female Huberman, and I think you guys are just taking really important scientific backed data that's democratized to improve people's health. So what was the most interesting conversation you had since me?
I'd say JP Erico. He's a biomedical engineer and a lawyer. He got like double majored in law and from Duke, and then went into the medical field, creating all sorts of crazy stuff. And he got into vagus nerve stimulation, and he's doing tons of stuff with neuroinflammation. So that was like a 2-hour conversation that just blew my mind over and over and over again. It was wild.
I think it's also like what he does with vagus nerve stimulation is also very applicable to what you're doing with fertility, Lauren. One of his kind of thesis and something they work on is that stimulating the vagus nerve and causing like relaxation is really beneficial in pregnancy for like resulting in or like removing risks.
Yeah.
And so it was fascinating,
And it's so cool how you get there, like how you basically optimize this engine to create, whether you want to create a baby or whether you want to create some type of innovation or really dope podcast where you reach a lot of people.
Yeah. So it's cool. Let's talk about your origin story though. What's your background? How'd you get here?
I'm only 10% human, as actually we all are. We're only 10% human, 90% microbial DNA by volume. And I became really interested in the microbiome and its potential to basically like work for us, to make us healthier and to make us function so we can honestly just make the most of our time, like here on Earth. I originated in the Gulf of America now, and it is... I grew up in a trailer, super poor. I invented cheese and mustard sandwiches, but I always had this like deep, need to try this deep fascination, I think from witnessing my mom's poor access to healthcare. And I'm like, watching her health decline, and she ended up with early onset dementia. And I really remember the day at 9 years old where I'm shaking, where we went into the clinic and what could have been like a 15-minute conversation about diet and preventing diabetes through controlling your blood glucose, I think was like turnkey for me in that moment of like, okay, I want to change the way healthcare is delivered. And also every person who's born with a body deserves that information of how to make it function better. That's me.
That's beautiful. I love that. So what did that lead you to? What is like in school and like what like your career progression? Sorry.
Yeah. So actually the career projection is interesting. I always knew I loved medicine, herbal medicine. At 4 years old, I was like cataloging botanical properties, and I didn't know I liked people because I was homeschooled actually for most of my life. So I thought I was going to be a veterinarian, and I was making little concoctions from my dog. And then change of events, I went to public school. We left my father, and I was like, oh, I like people. I'd love to be a doctor, but you need a cosigner to become a doctor in the United States to take on that debt. And so I remember being at this like inflection point where I actually was offered a modeling contract, and I thought I was too poor to go to college. So I almost dropped out. And then life has a way of just like finding you and like helping you get to where you want to go. Someone had sponsored me to go on a mission trip. To this day, I don't know who it was, with the church that I was at. And then it kind of clicked. I was like, oh, I go to a nurse practitioner. They still like take care of my health and order all the same labs. I want to do that. And um, yeah, I started my studies, and then I realized that I could become a scientist to change actually the way that clinicians are delivering evidence to improve your well-being. And that's where the microbiome got really fascinating to me, because there was this argument of nature versus nurture. And then I was like, wait, if I can't control the 10% human DNA I'm born with, but if I can basically shape that 90% microbial DNA, which has a role in turning on and off your epigenetic switches, making you function more effectively. Like, how do we do that? How do we do that from birth? And that's how the natural nipple was born.
It's wild. So you became a nurse practitioner, and then your work in that space led you to want to like explore science and dive deeper into science and things like that. And then that research lens got you into the biome and this microbial DNA space. And then obviously working with babies. How'd the babies thing come in though? Like, where did that come from?
Yeah, I'm not a mom. And babies are super interesting because if you think of them from a research perspective, they are a very good blank canvas to be able to study actually how the microbiome is impacting human health. Because there's not a lot of noise. There's not diabetes usually. And I was working with an amazing scientist named Dr. Maureen Grower, and she already had this incredible data set. So from preterm birth, if a baby is born early, till 4 years of age, we were able to look and see how shifts in the type of bacterial species impacted health outcomes. So within that, I was hyper curious about what we can control. And what I kept asking the question of the data, like, how do we get there in terms of a healthier human? The research pointed me in the direction of giving breast milk for longer. And I was like, okay, like, what's preventing that from actually happening? And in the States, maybe you're familiar, but like women don't even have mandated maternity leave. So I wrote my first grant and began listening to women during this experience of giving birth and what their barrier to breastfeeding was. And they kept describing over and over, like, if I give a bottle in the hospital or when I have to go back to work, my baby is getting used to that shape, that feel, that flow. I don't have a natural nipple with me.
Oh, dang.
But
I'd love to be able to show it. We'll drop B-roll into it.
okay, amazing. And sort of in that moment, I had a hypothesis as I'm looking at this bottle nipple. I'm like, this doesn't look like a lactating breast. And then I started delving into, okay, well, if it's preventing them from coming back to breast because it's so different, the baby gets used to one or the other, doesn't want to switch in between, what can we use with modern technology to make it more like a breast? So the natural nipple began from me 3D scanning lactating breasts, and another scientist had already begun looking at actual flow rate, like milk transfer from breast to baby. And this was all while I was still in the end of my PhD program, and I was like, okay, surely this must have been done. Someone must have done this, right? And I like sat on the idea for 6 months. And then when I saw from this other scientist, Dr. Pados, that current bottle nipples were not actually mimicking how breast flows for the baby's age, I was like, whoa, we need to do this. We need to make it easier for a woman to breastfeed.
And what's
Damn.
the issue with bottle feeding versus breastfeeding? Because I know there's a big difference, but maybe for people in the audience that don't know, can you just quickly explain like why it's so much better to breastfeed versus bottle feed?
To give breast milk is critical in the first 2 years of life because you as a human came into the world like a naive OS. You have no functioning immune system in those first 2 years of life. And the way we've been designed is to be next to our mother. And so when your saliva as an infant crosses through the mother's milk duct, you as a mom are actually creating the life vaccine, the tailored antibodies and important microbes that actually train your immune system moving forward how to interact with the world. So what the data actually shows is by at least giving breast milk for the first 6 months of life, you eliminate 300 billion in preventable medical costs that are caused by metabolic disorders, inflammation, basically an immune system that's gone awry, that doesn't know how to function and be sensitive and specific. So even if you deliver that milk through a bottle, amazing. Our goal is just how do we help the mom keep producing milk for as long as she wants to?
So the natural nipple is not necessarily to replace like bottles and like promote using bottles. It's more to have the baby feel like, oh, this is like my mom's nipple. I'm used to this.
Yes.
And so then when it goes back to the mom's nipple, there's not a fuss or a fight around. It just makes her able to do that longer because it's the baby doesn't get used to the bottle.
Yes.
Got it.
As a dad, it's like you got a third. It's a third boob.
Third boob. Love that. That makes sense.
I also remember you saying something about if you're using a bottle, like you're almost choking your baby because the flow is too much. Is that true?
So we did a study from the National Science Foundation at a hospital in California, and specifically preterm babies. So imagine being like so tiny, less than 3 pounds usually. They really need milk the slowest because they're so fragile. And what we discovered is that the bottles that were actually being used in standard hospitals, like there's never been an at-scale technology to make milk flow under 2.2 milliliters a minute in silicone. It's actually a really complex microfluidics problem. And what we saw from the data is that 1 in 4 babies that were preterm were actually choking, like having drops in oxygen and heart rate. And so that's where I was really determined to basically take this technology to the current bottle distributors and manufacturers because it's super easy to use our post-production technology and make milk flow much slower and safer. As you begin to grow and develop, it's kind of like, think of a growth chart. Like as you're growing up, your muscles, your oromaxillary muscles begin getting stronger. So you have more suction that you can provide and more intake that you can tolerate. But it is important to actually provide that resistance appropriately as you grow because you need your palate to begin to form. Did you guys read that book, Breathe?
It's one of my favorite
James
books.
Nestor, yeah,
By James
I like it.
Nestor.
Yeah.
One of my all-time favorite books, yes.
What part stuck with you?
I think a lot of it, but I always remember the nasal breathing part. Like when he was describing
Yes.
running or how much like disease it caused when you blocked the nasal passage and just breathed through the mouth. Like that really stuck with me. And also the part of, how when children and even adults, when they're not breathing through the nose, it can affect, their jaw structure. And
Dude,
I
it
thought
can.
was so fascinating.
And when you switch the way you breathe too, it does that. The thing that stuck to me, the line that your mouth is for food and your nose is for air, like I have never forgotten that.
I missed that line, but it's so true. And when you use your mouth for food, like when you're really young and you're breastfeeding, you need to use your nose for air. So it's not only training that autonomic response, but it's also just making sure that when you breathe, it's much more effective. And the thing that I thought was super interesting about looking at humans as we've evolved is when you begin to see there being a paradigm shift, which is like the industrialization period and a lot of women like going to work. And that's amazing if you want to prioritize your profession. But I think the narrative of how critical providing breast milk is got a little bit milk washed. And when you see this rise in marketing around formula being equal, which, I mean, look at how dynamic our biology is. Like, it's really, really difficult to match that level of sensitivity and specificity. You just also see like the orthodontic work that is required because the palates aren't forming widely, as well as going up, as well as almost eradicating this really important bacteria. So I'll shift a little into the bacteria conversation because they actually are like this species we coexist with that really they want us to thrive. Like we're their host. And this one, Bifidobacillus infantis, actually evolved with us to help metabolize food and make B12, which you need to create red blood cells. So can you imagine being anemic because we nearly wiped out breastfeeding and giving this really critical microbe from birth? Like we could have changed our human evolution. It's just wild to me.
That is wild. You mentioned you were in a PhD program. What happened? Did you drop out? Did you finish that? Like what
I
happened with that?
Yeah, I got all the way to the end, which is actually, it's been difficult building a company to be almost Dr. Wright, not Dr. Wright. Like the ego wants that title. I got to the end and a couple of things were going on, but I realized I really can't ride 3 horses and win. So I had filed the patent for the natural nipple, suddenly won Johnson and Johnson's like nursing innovation grant, had a team of 9, was also working clinically, and I wanted to put all my bets on what I felt could actually reach the most people and provide the most preventative solution. So I went all in, and that was 7 years ago.
Wow. You ever thought about going back and like trying to finish it or anything? Or like what did you have left to do? Like
Yeah, I needed to finish the analysis aspect of my dissertation and defend it. And I have thought about going back. I mean, I'm itching now. This is where maybe like the new venture will come up, because the most interesting dinner conversation I think Chloe and I ever had is around how babies are currently being made. And a lot of people, need support through that process at the end of their biological window. And when I started learning how the most effective hormonal therapy on the market is made from human pee, I was like, whoa, how can we basically reach more people without pee? and how can we use microbes to help in this process as well? So I'm like ready to do more research again, in a nutshell.
Yeah, we're
you
running into a really interesting fertility problem on the planet, and you're becoming an expert and are an expert on this. So maybe could you explain a little bit on like, yeah, where fertility is currently heading and why it's going downhill?
Yeah, these numbers were really hard for me to get my head around. So basically the human replacement rate in order to sustain the population is 2.1 babies to every mom. And because of there's actually only been one country to ever pick itself up from a declining fertility rate, basically. And because we're already below human replacement rate, the loss of we're going to be at a population trough, like lowest amount of people again in 200 years, which is kind of wild to think about. And the conversation actually provokes really interesting responses. It's like, is that such a bad thing? Well, whether or not you care for a world with no people, it dramatically shifts where our economy and our perception of trade and currency is going. And I want to focus more on giving families or professionals agency, I think, through this process, because while the last 7 years I was building the natural nipple, I actually sold my eggs to help fund my PhD. And I realized like I was not paying attention, not looking at the subject, because I mean, we know we have as women a certain amount of time. We're born with a finite number of eggs to be. But I was like, what am I really going to do differently about it? Like, I'm doing everything I can. You're not going to rush me into finding a partner. Like, I'm taking pretty good care of my body. But then when I began to look into what the microbes could do to actually extend this window, I was like, that's attractive to me, because I still want to make cool shit and maybe make a baby in like 2 years. But I want to have more time to create and not feel like I'm pressured into making a decision either way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's interesting. I feel like this is a conversation. I just was talking about this with a OBGYN who talks about this stuff and does all sorts of bioidentical hormones and all sorts of different things like that around fertility as well. Where did this question lead you?
So basically, from human urine, I was like, there's a population that basically has really great hormone levels that are super supportive of pregnancy and fertility. And I was like, well, they must be doing something different for them to be so different from the rest of the population. And I had a couple of hypotheses, but it came down to like, I want to look at the gut microbiome because ultimately my rabbit hole took me to learning something really interesting that even going through classic Western like medical training, I never had learned. And it's basically menopause is the cessation or you run out of eggs to be. Think of your ovary as a bank and think of every month you have a cycle and you're just meant to take one of the eggs to be and turn it into an egg. And you do this for as long as you have eggs to be. And that determines a woman's window, like reproductive window. What I didn't realize is that how you basically take care of the eggs in the bank. Imagine I'm going to the teller and I'm like, give me 100,000 every time. I want it all on black. Yeah. And then suddenly you're out of money. Like you're out of the eggs to be. So there's actually a way to be a little bit more careful in how we transact and protect the telomeres, and those eggs to be are called follicular cells. And there's preliminary research that's actually showing that microbes can help do that. And how cool that these bacteria can help reduce inflammation so we can have more time to choose.
Could you break that mechanism down anymore? Metaphors are great, but it's not a mechanism. Like, could you, because I get this a lot in therapy, like the body keeps the score and it's like a great little metaphor, but there's not really a mechanism for trauma being stored in the body. Like, so could you break the mechanism down at all?
Yeah, basically, the preliminary research right now is showing that there are 5 microbial community types that reduce inflammation. And if you think of longevity and if you think of fertility, they're actually both the same thing. And the engine that controls basically how well you live and how long you live or how long you are able to create for is how your body responds like with inflammation. Is it appropriate? Is it actually at an invader or is it itself? So the microbial communities that we found that are associated with less inflammation are kind of like a roadmap, right? Like if you look at your vaginal or gut microbiome and you see, well, hey, there's actually one critter in there, proteobacteria, there's a little bit too much and he's acting like an emo kid. Like, me with like all of this, I had all these safety pins in the side of my shirt and I'm like really in my destructive, like reckless phase, which is cool, but I ended up with like so many scars on my body from like longboarding in shorts. Like it's only going to last so long if I keep behaving recklessly like a proteobacteria. So it's about basically shifting your microbial communities to ones that are less reactive. And the reason for that is there's different cytokines that are created when your immune system is really reactive. And they can cause damage to your self cells, which is the whole thing we don't want to damage, right? Is those eggs to be. So it's a matter of creating, imagine your eggs to be are just like out in the world and they don't have an umbrella and we are giving them umbrellas in the middle of a hailstorm.
What
Okay,
is
so
the,
basically
how are they being attacked?
inflammation. Oh, sorry, Cody. Do you want to go?
Yeah, I was just how are they being attacked or how does the damage and cytokines and inflammation, like, I'm just curious. This is my genuine curiosity because I love this stuff, and I'm just curious if you know, like, how does inflammation? Cytokines are inflammatory chemicals for people who didn't know, but how does that stuff get to the eggs, and what is it doing to the eggs specifically, or these cells that you're describing?
Yeah. So what I understand about it and what the mechanism that I've studied is it basically promotes like the cell exploding called apoptosis. So basically, if you're not needed, and it's not like inflammation is designed to destroy things that are causing damage to you. So if your body is creating inflammation where there's no actual true toxin or true virus or true like invader to the cell, you're just going to end up damaging you. Your cell to be just explodes, called apoptosis.
Damn.
And then there's like what I learned recently is like ovarian cells, follicular cells, are the most fragile, but the most like elegant because you're born with this finite amount and the telomeres are actually shorter. So the telomere is basically what determines how long your cell lives for. And it's getting like chafed if there's a lot of like cytokines and inflammatory activity that's not necessary.
That
So
makes sense.
it's gonna reach its explosion point sooner than it has to.
Can you give the basic definition of a telomere? Like use the shoelace example, whatever works, but just to make sure people know what that is.
Oh, okay. So how I understand a telomere is it's like wearing a life jacket. It gives you like a buffer. It gives you a buffer against like the environment, or it helps you be like a little more buoyant. But once you, if I was to take a nail filer and just erase your life jacket, how would you float anymore? And then you just kind of sink and die.
I have not heard that analogy before,
So
but
many
I love that analogy. That's awesome.
the shoelace one is like the like plastic part at the end of a shoelace.
Yeah. Oh, that's the best way. Can you explain that,
Mm.
Cody?
Yeah, like you have your shoelace, and if you didn't have that plastic part that's on the front of your shoelace or whatever, then it would just be the raw like threads that are exposed, and it becomes all crazy looking. That's your DNA. Your DNA has a telomere, which is the plastic piece that holds it together. And every time your cells or your DNA is replicated to go create proteins or duplicate itself, it like mitosis, meiosis things, some of that telomere gets cut off every time it's replicated. And that's why we age. Your telomeres get shorter.
Yeah. Because the more time that you're replicating and doing stuff, it's like this little sand clock. But thank you for explaining that.
I like the
Now
life
I
jacket.
know about CoCreate, and so how does that help women and their fertility?
So it's really, really preliminary research right now. So we're testing basically a formulation that each of these ingredients, think of like AG1, but for fertility. But we're personalizing it based on your unique microbes. So as I mentioned, like you, Chloe, may have a lot more proteobacteria, and that's what we need to focus on getting down and replacing more of L. crispatus, which is like very good in the vaginal tract, right? So you need a different formulation than the person next to you. So we're just basically taking personalization to your microbiome and developing a protocol that we can continue to refine and make it better and better to ultimately like reset your microbiome to work for you so you can create for longer. And if that just means you want to hopefully delay menopause because you're causing less damage through unnecessary inflammation, amazing. If it means you're actually ready to conceive and you want to create the environment for retrieving the perfect egg, also amazing. And yeah, I think for me personally, it became super relevant because when I just got some of my own blood work back and it's been something I've been avoiding, I'm like, okay, now I need to actually take a step to change like some of the conditions in my body. And when I sought out to do that, and when I do that for my patients, like getting each of the individual ingredients that goes in this protocol or formulation is like really expensive. It's really inconvenient. I'm like, my gosh, can someone just ship this directly to me? Like perfectly tailored to help reset my microbes. And it came because I need it.
Just as a
We
blanket question, what mistakes do you think women are making with their fertility? Like, what are kind of the worst possible things you can do that will really like reduce your fertility window?
Definitely binge drinking. So anything that's causing any, I know.
surprise, surprise.
Wine, like full disclosure, I'm about to go have wine. I'm just so I mean we're all there. We all need to pick our buffer, whatever inflammation we're experiencing or choose to experience. I think another one that many women aren't actually aware of the risk, and I do feel like it's important to have this discussion, is how they're being dosed for hormonal egg retrieval. And so I just want full disclosure, like the hormones that I've talked about are very appropriate if you do not have enough key fertility hormones to take your eggs to be and turn one into an egg. And a lot of women have this condition. It's anovulatory infertility. So in this case, that hormone is required to help you do that. What I experienced personally when I was donating eggs is having a higher dose than necessary, because oftentimes the number of eggs that are taken from the retrieval is associated with your relative ability to get a baby later, right? Like the thawing process, you might lose some. So basically, to buffer for human error, a lot of dosing is kind of like pump and dump. Like, let's see how much cells we can turn over and how many eggs we can store at once. But what does that mean for our bank? We just took out a massive transaction. And so that's where basically the goal of CoCreate is providing a buffer. So like if you need to have that hormonal option, no shame, but we're actually like reducing the amount of damage is my hope that could be caused by that transaction. Does that make sense?
So this would be some type of supplement or some type of like, what is it?
Starts as a supplement, and then we have a little bit more data around mechanism is an actual adjuvant. So an adjuvant is something you take alongside a drug to make it more effective or more safe.
Huh. Do you have examples of other adjuvants? I've never heard that before. That's cool.
There's like oftentimes when you're taking chemo, you need to take an adjuvant because it's so toxic to like all of your cells. So it's basically like a buffer. The exact drug names I won't name,
Yeah, no
but
worries.
anytime something has like a risk associated with it, you basically want to better the patient's odds of getting to the clinical outcome, which is like, let's make an egg, but let's do it in the best way for your body.
So your thing would be an adjuvant, or it would be the chemo?
It would be
Like,
the adjuvant. The chemo exists and be effective already.
got it. That's fucking interesting. That's cool. I like that. So we've talked about gut microbiome a lot. We talked with Jasmine Chilcott with Fixed Biome. Don't know if you've ever heard of them or not. And when we talked with her, she was talking about like how hard it is to really test the gut biome and like the effect that these things are having. You have a background in research and like clinical work and things like that. I'm just curious on your perspective on this. Like, how do you test if these things work? If they don't work, how do you know what's there, what's not there? Like,
Excellent point. Like this research was so costly in the past because basically to DNA sequence bacteria, metagenomically, which means like let's look at every type of species that's present, was like you needed to be a part of a study in a lab because these sequencers, Illuma 16S, I believe it's called, cost a lot of money to run your shit through. Thankfully, there's been some advancements in terms of direct-to-consumer testing. There's actually a company that I've partnered with called Tiny Health, and they made it a lot safer to do like mail-in tests, or more valid to do mail-in tests. So if you poop on a Q-tip and you ship it in, they have created basically a preservative. So we're actually measuring what's there, and your bacteria doesn't die in transit. So I'm really thankful that the science and how we can reach people is catching up. I think it's about 200 US to do those tests. So then it's a matter of also having a clinician that knows, okay, what do we do with this information? Cool. I'm 25% proteobacteria, but how do I actually shift it? And that's where, having done this one-on-one consultation with my patients for so long, I'm like, I want to take this feedback and scale it into something that's really easy to do and much more cost effective than like $5,000 to $10,000 of going through all the consulting and me personally analyzing your microbes.
Interesting. From baby microbes to mommy microbes. That's
I love that.
That's cool.
From baby
Your journey
microbes,
is,
mommy microbes. That's awesome.
yeah. I mean, the natural nipples. It sounds like it's helping a lot with that. I did not know that. Well, actually, one thing. This is totally random. Speaking of microbes and things, could you explain the mechanism in the nipple? You mentioned it briefly. in
Yeah.
this conversation, but in our last conversation, you went more in depth on what like an actual mom's nipple has all of these two-way channels. Like, could you explain that? Speaking of
Yes.
baby microbiomes.
Yes. Okay. So you have up to like about 20 milk ducts, and that is basically you have a nipple,
Mhm.
and around the nipple, around the areola, you have all these milk ducts, and they receive information from the baby's saliva. This process is called crosstalk. And this is where the mom's body is responding with the exact appropriate antibody based on whatever little virus or bacteria that baby who doesn't have their own immune system needs to fight off to stay healthy. And I just think that's so genius of nature. Like moms were carrying us around in tribe, usually in the same environment as we are most of the time, and able to actually produce the exact immune cocktail that little Chloe needed to protect her from the environment, and Cody too. And for this, I actually didn't want to ask my mom how long I was breastfed because I was like, do I really want to bias like how healthy I think I am? It is what it is now.
Is there an estimated like ideal time or length to breastfeed?
Yeah, so that benefit, that maximum benefit in terms of setting your microbiome up for success to really function well is 6 months of providing breast milk, but the World Health Organization really recommends 2 years of providing breast milk.
Got it.
And
So
that it
two
makes
years.
corresponds to when you have learned enough about your own environment to create your own innate immune system, adaptive immune system, sorry.
Can stress chemicals and inflammation and cytokines and all of the things that we have just been talking about inside a stressed out mom cross that barrier as well and set the child up for a stressed nervous system and biome?
Super, super interesting. So the nervous system stuff, other researchers are talking about. When it comes to actually the cytokines and what passes through the breast milk, this was actually a part of my dissertation. I was curious to look at moms who had socio-demographic factors that might have correlated to stress because we didn't measure their perceived stress score. So like were they single? Were they really like in poverty? Were they smoking? This definitely has a relationship to the cytokines, but what we didn't know is like, okay, that baby's saliva is also probably needing these interleukin 4 and 6 in a similar fashion to protect their immune system. So regardless of what the mom is passing, it was still superior from the research to provide that breast milk because it is so adaptive for that baby. And this is really funny that you bring it up, because actually my mom told me just this past Christmas, she was like, I was so stressed when you were feeding, and I was really concerned, like, oh, am I passing this on somehow? And she's like, I just looked down at you and you were literally giggling. You were like giggling, like, and she was in one of the most stressful situations. So, to be fed and nourished and to have that good bacteria passing through, I just want to reassure any woman who's concerned about if it might be causing harm. It's still so much more protective than current formulas on the market.
So
That's super
the
interesting.
benefits outweigh the costs in a way.
Yes, yes.
I know we're coming kind of close to time, so Cody, maybe we should jump to the future section. But Ren, like
Let's do it.
what do your companies look like 10 years from now? Like either what's Natural Nipple doing or CoCreate or both, but what's your future roadmap?
Oh, this is the fun one.
Yeah.
I think 10 years from now, what will give me the most joy and fulfillment is seeing the natural nipple being really used internationally to support families in that feeding journey. So whether that's licensure, just getting it out through the channels that are already producing nipples. And for the new venture, my goal is to really make it an option for you to create how you want. Like less chaos around this concept of like, can I create? And just knowing that there is a personalized, basically microbial driven antioxidant solution for you. Because that's the whole reason why I haven't looked for so long is what more could I actually do? And if it helps me actually have a baby, cool, we could have another podcast about that down the line. But yeah,
Perfect.
that's my goal. Like that works and that helps future families. And then I get to create more stuff with my best friends and enjoy sunshine. What's 10 years for you guys?
Chloe, you go first.
Well, I think, something we've both talked about we're building is, a media company, where we can help get, brands more visibility, also creators more visibility, and underneath that, having companies. And for me, something I've been building and working on building is inward health. So providing solutions for ADHD and people struggling with anxiety and also health optimization. So whether that's supplements, courses, what have you, creating this platform for people that really struggle to not only, overcome ADHD and anxiety, but to optimize their lives with it.
It's so inspiring. I don't know if I can say this just because, like, being your friend for still, like, what is it now? 5 years? But just really watching you, like, hack yourself, like, taking something that, yeah, it's difficult to focus. And, like, how do you turn it into your superpower? And, like, watching you do that and through your own learning help so many people around you.
Thank you.
Future of inward health. Cody, what about you?
Mine's similar. We're connected. Like we're trying to build a media company through the Decision Lab that becomes like the trusted source for health and wellness information to help people cut through the noise. And then through those connections and collaborations that come from that, be able to create our own companies and do things like that. And we just opened up the Balanced Creator community as well, to help creators, content creators like solopreneurs, the anxious or the ambitious but anxious among us,
Yeah.
to help them with their mental health, like help them build, monetize, grow their brand in a sustainable way that they don't have to sacrifice their mental emotional health. And so being able to help that group and community through my own research, like endocrinology is one of my favorite areas to look at, and like helping each of those segments and help creators and achievers in each of those segments so they can go do bigger things in the world. And then create solutions for them. I'd really love to have like a companion, like an AI companion that could help content creators with content
Yes.
creation, growth, but more importantly, their mental and emotional health, their physical health, and those types of things, and kind of grow and scale from there. In the far future, I want to build a human AI operating system that can interconnect all of these wild pieces of data and all of this information that's impossible for us to collect and integrate it into like a neurotech, biotech, nanotech type of system that we kind of are interconnected with and stuff. But that's way in the future.
Interoperability. It's just like getting the latch. We needed to make the boob, third boob, and you're gonna make the third AI.
Yes.
Yeah, or the next layer of our brain is what I really would love to be. Like our prefrontal cortex is the last to develop. Like what's the next layer? Could be a neurotech layer from my perspective.
Super interesting. Oh wow, we didn't even get as weird as last time, but it means that we have to do more.
Now we're gonna have to do another
Yeah.
one.
Love to have you on. I mean, you'd be a great expert to bring on more consistently
Yeah,
as
we
well,
could have
especially in validating some of
research.
these things. Because there's a lot of claims around this stuff. So we have a lightning round that's the very last section, actually, where the goal is to answer these in one word, one story, or one sentence. It's kind of the goal. I think one of the best ones to ask you would be, what's the number one health and wellness myth that needs to die, that you'd like to bust?
Ooh, number one health and wellness myth. I think just what I discovered this week is that like your biological window is not pre-programmed. It's how you transact with your eggs in the bank. And I basically want to be like the crypto of egg banking. So
Let's go. Doge to the moon, baby.
Love it.
Love that.
thanks to you got.
That's
All right.
beautiful.
The next one's what's like a dark industry secret? So what's a shady practice in the health and wellness space that nobody's talking about?
Oh my God, do I talk about the period poop?
Yes.
Why not both?
It was number 1 and 2.
Well, fun fact that drug helps you make more fertility hormone. There is biomimic versions, but the most effective is actually taken from women that are in the first 3 months of pregnancy from their pee, and also in the first 3 years of menopause. So you're just injecting that in there. And then the interesting thing about, I think, how we really discovered the field of the microbiome was through this awful condition called C. diff. If you've ever worked in a hospital and you walk down the hall and you smell something that is like, oh my God, like I'm gonna puke, it's C. diff. And the way that they were like, okay, we need to fix this for this patient was there's nothing left in his colon, like he's had so much diarrhea. We need to try to put good bacteria back in. How do we do that fast? Where do you get good bacteria from? A healthy person's shit. And so they did that. And and suddenly, like 2 months later, not only did this guy not have this like life-threatening infection, it was going septic basically into the bloodstream, but he didn't have depression, he didn't have the type of diabetes he had before, and had lost a bunch of weight. And that's where we kind of discovered, wow, microbes are doing a lot more than we thought by taking the healthy person's microbiome and putting it in the unhealthy person's.
That's a fecal transplant. Is that the
Yeah.
word for it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard about those. That's a wild time. It's crazy that it had that big of effect on it.
South Park did a great job, I think, just bringing that to light. And now there's like something being explored, like vaginal microbiome transplants. I'll let your mind go where it needs to, but like take the healthy and
Introduce it to the unhealthy.
B-roll, please. Thank you.
Interesting. Hey, I mean, it's a health and wellness podcast. Anything goes. Like, doesn't bother me. All right, talk to us about a counterintuitive truth. Like, what's one truth that you believe that very few people agree with you on? Like, what's something you're like, I'm certain about this, and people are like, no, I don't agree.
Okay, so the only reason I'm not certain is because we don't have objective measurement tools for it. But this is the weird thing. So if you think of our rock, our Earth, the oldest living species is the bacteria. So they've had the longest time to evolve. They've also had the longest time to evolve with humans. It's actually our bacteria that's communicating with our nervous system. Maybe you've heard of gut-brain axis, changing neurotransmitter levels, how you feel, how you eat, how you function. Don't you think if they've learned how to communicate with our human DNA intraorganismally, that these guys that have been around the longest on this rock know how to communicate with each other? And my unpopular theory is like, we just don't know how far they're able to communicate. Like, is it trans-etherally? We only recently discovered about sonar and radar. So I really think there's a little bit more, there's more to the gut feeling. And we don't know, is it trans-etherally to other rocks that these microbes can communicate? Because certainly I've had this feeling where I hadn't seen a person come in the room, but my microbes full on check, all voted in favor of that being a good microbiome for me. So they're helping us, I think, in our survival. And I'm curious about your thoughts on that.
Dude, there's more research around this than you would think. Dr. Huberman's even talked about this. Like, in a few seconds of meeting someone, or I think it's the first 11 minutes, or I can't remember the exact number, so somebody put it in the comments, but you wipe your hand across your face or into your nose or on your mouth to get their stuff, their bacteria, their pheromones, all of the stuff into you, and that is a way that we sense somebody.
Oh, totally.
And so it's like, wow, it's kind of wild.
It's so
more research needs to be done, but
such a cool feature that all animals, you see us doing that. But I think just the thing that we have yet to prove is how far do they talk on our behalf.
Right. Well, especially like pheromones, those are out of your body, like those are sensed through the air or pass through the air or whatever. Like, so yeah. It's interesting stuff. What's something you wish more people asked you? Like, what's the one question you wish more people would ask you?
I like the question, like, what drives you? Because you have the opportunity to be as vulnerable as you want with someone. Mm-hmm. And like, what do you do? What do I do is like one little sliver, of who I am. What drives me is like my core values and like my DNA and like what helped me, you asked like the story of me in the beginning, and that was really nice just to be seen and heard in that. Thank you.
What does drive you other than your gut?
Okay, less than a minute. Other than my microbes, I really just want to not repeat the same patterns that, my mom from being in poverty. Like, I want to break out of this little loop. I want to learn something and evolve. And so, if it's preventative modalities and making them accessible so people understand their body and how to biohack it, basically, I think that's my lane.
Awesome. Hell yeah.
That's beautiful.
We always have a guest leave a question for the next guest. So Katherine Arnston, she left you the question. So I'm finding the question.
What message is the most
No, there we
powerful
go.
one to give consumers to help them be healthier? Like, what's the one message you want to give them to be healthier?
Oh, tap into your biology belief. Like, go back to that last time you felt so good, like you trusted your OS, like what was happening in that moment, and like do more of that, get more of that.
I like that.
I
All right,
love
what's the question you want to leave for the next guest?
What drives you?
brilliant.
Yeah.
Beautiful. I like that. That's easy to ask. Just asked you. So cool. Well, we appreciate you hopping on here. It was a great time. I think this turned more into an expert interview than even talking about your company. So that was it's awesome the depth of knowledge you have.
You guys too. It's always so much fun. Thank you.
So much for joining us. We really appreciate you being here.
Yeah. I appreciate you guys too. We'll talk soon.
Is there any place you'd like to leave people or like send them? We can put it in the description, or any final message you want to have for people before we peace out?
Oh yeah, true. That's a good idea. Naturalnipple.com. If you know anyone who has already made a baby, and they'll get 50% off to make it easier to feed between breast and bottle. 83% easier actually compared to other bottles. And then through that, actually, there's like a contact us button. And if you have questions about CoCreate, we're still in stealth mode right now, but you want to get signed up for the very first reproductive longevity retreat, you can just contact us there.
Perfect. We'll put it in the description. Thank you so much for hopping on. That's it for this portion of our conversation. Chloe and I will do the lab results after Lauren pieces out. But thank you so much for having on. Or thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. Round two, even.
I appreciate it. I'm glad we can all hear each other. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Peace.
Bye.
All right, it's time for the lab results section where we break down what we really think about our guest. First thing for me is just, I feel like it's turned a little bit more into an expert interview than our traditional, like diving into one specific product. But we did talk about lab results, and we did talk about Natural Nipple, and we did talk about CoCreate. So just any initial thoughts or just general thoughts to start?
Well, I think I should be mostly asking you, Cody, because I will admit that I'm a little bit biased because this is one of my best friends. But she also comes like highly, highly recommended because I am, fully aware of the education that she has, witnessed her building her companies, meeting with people. So I've been there for a lot of this. And I fully understand the research that's behind it. So for me, it's a no-brainer.
Could you explain some of the research behind it then? Like, what do you
Yeah.
know about the research that's behind it? She didn't have time to get super deep in it. I've seen the
Well,
research
she's had,
too, but
2 NIH government grants. So
Right.
there's a lot of research. So that actually says a lot. Those are very, very difficult to get and take a long time to apply and receive. And so basically what she's developed is a process and this nipple for the milk flow. So she has research and data on the milk flow and how it improves breastfeeding.
Right. Yeah, to me, that's the biggest thing, because I remember doing the research for this initially. And when we talked with her on the first one, we had more time. And so we were able to get deeper into some of the research she'd done. And it came out of her doing a PhD in clinical work. So it's like hard to have, not that validates something into the future necessarily without doing more research, but still that's a pretty big sign. Kind of like when we talked to JP from True Vega, like it's like, oh, okay, $250 million of research went into this. Like, got it. That makes a lot of sense. So to me, as far as did it pass the lab test, I would say the Natural Nipple did, and I would recommend that. In fact, my brother in June is about to have his first kid, and I will be getting him a Natural Nipple. So would I buy it? Yes. I don't have kids myself yet, one day, but yeah, I would actually buy it, and I do think that Natural Nipple passes the lab test. As far as CoCreate, she said it's still in stealth, and they're still doing data, so I think that one is obvious. It needs more research before like we could recommend it. Conceptually, love the idea. And I think that would be a humongous market, but CoCreate and what they're doing there, obviously needs more research. And she said that as much as well. So I don't think that's crazy to say.
Absolutely.
I love that. Was there any big lesson learned or something that caught you off guard or something that was new that you learned this time?
Well, I think I always just go back, like the coolest thing is that like the breastfeeding, the interaction between the child's saliva and the mother's nipple and how brilliant the body is. You know, it
the
makes
crosstalk.
the crosstalk. It's brilliant. That always just stands out for me. Whenever she talks about that, I'm like, whoa.
Blows my freaking mind. I
Yeah.
love it. I would love to know more about how that affects the nervous system and how that affects inflammation, like how that affects kid psychology, like all of that kind of stuff would be so interesting, especially with, again, what we talked about with JP, how important that portion of your life is as far as your neurons. Your brain is pruning those neurons. And if you're hyperinflamed, your microglia, your brain's immune system has to go do other things, so they don't get to prune like they need to, which can lead to certain things. If they're too present, then they prune too much, and it's like, oh crap, it can lead to these different issues, psychological and neurological issues. So it's kind of interesting. We are so complex, like it's so crazy.
And we are so intricately designed where when she touched on, we introduced formula, but you can't replicate mother's milk. And so it's just something we need to keep thinking of and coming back to is like nature has all of the intelligence built into it. And we try to simplify things, or we try to overcomplicate things, but at the end of the day, like nature really knows best.
Yeah. I wish we had time to talk about like the shame and the guilt and some of the stuff that is associated with like not being able to produce milk or not being able to breastfeed or going to formula about it. Because last time she talked a ton about like that as well and the mental health and challenges around those types of things. So I can't imagine how tough that's got to be, especially when you hear you're supposed to do this for 2 years. And it's just not possible for some people. And so
absolutely.
I feel for them, and that I could understand how that'd be hard. So to hear this stuff constantly, and then you feel like a bad mom, and it's like, oh my God, so much pressure in an already stressful environment.
Completely.
So cool. All right, well, that's it for this episode of the Decision Lab. Hopefully, this lab results section gave you some more clarity on the natural nipple, and if it's something that's worth your time and money. I personally, again, I'm getting one for my brother, so I absolutely, or it's not for him, it's for Maeve, his daughter, but I'm definitely going to get one. So thank you so much. If you guys appreciate this no BS approach to wellness, you should hit the subscribe button so that you can see more of our episodes. Please go look at other ones and comment any other brands you want us to investigate next, or an expert you want us to bring on. Just drop them in the comments or hit us up on Instagram. Just say hi, even if you want to. We love when people say hi. We're almost to 100 subscribers. So stay tuned, and we'll see you next time on the Decision Lab. Peace.
Thanks so much. Bye.